Hi there. I was planning today to spend some time with you, maybe 10 minutes though at most, going through my medical journals. I don't know if this is a mirror language. It looks like it's a mirror view for you, but it's the Journal of Clinical Oncology, which is the main journal of the American Society of Clinical Oncology that we receive, I think monthly, to keep us updated about all kinds of research data related to any type of tumor. I see Inge is watching. Hi, Inge. I can't invite you to join me here, as we discovered. I need to have at least 10,000 viewers. I'm trying my best to get there, and hopefully people will help us to get there. Oh, and we have a bunch of people here. We have Jennifer here, we have Diane here, we have Inge here. Thank you, Jennifer. I slept 4 hours this afternoon, and I woke up at 4, I think, and I had a bunch of coffee, and now this is my good time for maybe 1 or 2 hours until I start sinking again. I repeat the same cycle. I wake up at 7. It takes me a bit to wake up. Then I have a few good hours in the morning, and then I nap. And then I wake up. It takes me a while to wake up, and then I have a few good hours in the evening, and then I sink again. So this is where we're at now. The saga about my ventilator is continuing. There continues to be a miscommunication between the doctor's office and the ventilator company. I don't understand, but at this point it's been going on for a bit, so 1 day or 1 week, or hopefully not a month longer, doesn't, I guess, make a difference. But as promised, I wanted to do this in November because there was a very good article in there, and then I didn't, and now in the meantime I have the December journal, and now there's so many articles I want to share with you that I don't even know where to begin. So maybe we should start with the one from November. And I think I already shared one article that was published in this issue, which I thought is very remarkable. And you all can read the abstracts online. You can just not read the full text manuscript. And this particular publication was trying to come up with the best surveillance regimen for early stage endometrial cancer survivors, because believe it or not, any surveillance regimen for any tumor at this point is pretty much not evidence-based, except for breast cancer. For breast cancer, we have pretty good data that routine surveillance really doesn't make you live longer as a whole, except coming into the office for office visits, except for physical exams, except for mammograms if you have residual breast tissue. And based on those interactions, you and your provider can decide if you're a breast cancer survivor, if you need any further testing with CT scan, MRI, blood work, the whole shebang. But if you don't have any symptoms, then for breast cancer survivors, early stage breast cancer survivors, there's a pretty large evidence-based recommendation that surveillance testing with these extra tests doesn't make a difference as a whole. But we don't have this evidence for any other tumor type, and so it's very good that in a big journal like this, they did a big randomized trial to look at the effectiveness of intensive follow-up versus minimalist follow-up for endometrial cancer survivors that are early stage. And this was a large randomized trial that included 42 hospitals that were in Europe, in Italy and France, because I'm not sure that they would be able to do something like this in the United States. I think Americans are pretty empowered to speak up and say we want imaging. So they did this in Europe. And hold on, because I'm reading this together with you. So the basic conclusion is that doing an intense follow-up regimen for endometrial cancer treated patients did not improve their overall survival, even in those that are high risk for recurrence. So their conclusion was there's no need to routinely add vaginal cytology, laboratory, or imaging investigations to the minimalist follow-up regimen. In the minimalist follow-up regimen, let's see if they describe that here. They don't. But I think really what it means is office visits. So this is the beginning of more evidence-based practice for survivors that maybe doing less might be more. So that was one thing that I think I already shared with you before. I thought it's very striking and probably will trigger further studies like this. If you have any questions, just put them down below in the comments. Let's see if there's anything else published in that November issue of the Journal of Clinical Oncology that might be relevant to you. Okay, this is somewhat irrelevant, but I have to tell you I didn't read it yet, so we're going to read this together. So, this is a complicated topic. Some cancer therapies that we ask you to take need to be activated by your body before they become active and get anti-cancer activity. And there's different enzymes and complicated names. And for the purpose of simplicity, the one I'm talking about here is an enzyme called DPYD, which helps metabolize 5-FU or fluoropyrimidine. But let's... Okay, can I leave a comment here? Go away. Here we go. I'm trying to paste this. There we go. Send. I threw the link for this particular gene in the comments. I'm curious if you can hear me talk when I went to Safari. But anyways, this is an enzyme that is responsible that this particular enzyme is responsible for not necessarily the activation, but the secretion. So I'm guessing you can't. I'm guessing when I'm in Savire, you can't hear me. Okay. So DPYD is an enzyme that's not necessarily involved with the activation, but with the secretion of fluoropyrimidine, or 5-FU, which is a chemotherapy agent used for different tumors, but one of them is colon cancer. And the tricky part with that is if that enzyme doesn't work as well, it could potentially lead to less secretion of this chemotherapy and thus longer circulating levels, potentially higher levels, and so more toxicity. And so a never-ending debate that everybody follows, I guess, is whether there is a clinical utility of pre-treatment assessment of this DPYD enzyme testing for patients who receive 5-FU. Will it help anticipate potentially severe, if not even lethal toxicity? And this particular article was sort of like reviewing previous done research about this, and their eventual conclusion or result, let's start with the results, is that there is no direct evidence of efficacy reduction, and the available indirect evidence demonstrates that DPYD guided dosing results in similar 5-FU or chemotherapy exposure and toxicity compared with standard dosing in non-carriers. So there's minimal risk of efficacy reduction. So this article should serve as a call to action for clinicians and clinical guidelines committees to reevaluate the clinical utility of pre-treatment DPYD testing. The clinical utility has not been demonstrated. So in this particular thing, they refer to both effectiveness as well as toxicity. So that's what I remembered. I think DPYD also has to do with I guess in a complicated way, if it's helping the secretion further along, then the serum levels may not be as high for a targeted period of time as it was intended to, and the efficacy may be less. So I think it's still DPYD, I guess, still has to do with secretion of the chemotherapy only, and that can affect the effectiveness, meaning if it secretes faster, effectiveness is less. If it secretes slower, the toxicity is higher. But it looks like here again, which we've also seen in different scenarios, that pre-treatment testing of the level of function of this particular enzyme and adopting chemotherapy dosing for 5-FU does not seem to make a clinical difference in terms of its efficacy and toxicity. But I'm pretty sure that we need more evidence to further understand this. Let me see if there's any questions in the meantime. So there's a few viewers here. I don't know if I'm massively confusing all of you. Do you find this helpful as I read this together with you? Ulrike, are you still up? Do you find this helpful if I read this together with you, or is this massively confusing? So another article that was published, actually an editorial in the November issue of the Journal of Clinical Oncology. I was looking at longitudinal analyses of COVID-19 vaccination in patients with lung cancer, antibody responses, and variant-specific neutralization. There's an article published in this particular journal that then there was an editorial written about, and that editorial has a takeaway. And let me read you the takeaway. In the article accompanying this editorial, longitudinal studies of anti-severe acute respiratory syndrome, spike protein titers, and the ability of these antibodies to neutralize authentic virus in patients with lung cancer after vaccination, and a boost with messenger RNA. And although 75% of patients mounted a good antiviral immune response, 25% failed to generate an adequate immune response after initial vaccination, raising questions, obviously, about why this failure was happening and how to optimally approach immunization to vaccinate patients with lung cancer, and I would argue any other cancer. So this study indicates both the need to monitor patients with lung cancer for a response to COVID-19 messenger RNA vaccinations, identify the non-responders for follow-up and further attempts at immunization, and continue collecting and analyzing information and specimens from our patients to better understand. So I guess even though we're now how many years in this COVID, 2.5 years, we're still only in the beginning of understanding whether individuals who are immunosuppressed, even temporarily from cancer therapies, are able to respond to immunizations and what that means if they're not. Okay, there's another interesting article here. That's not really relevant to survivors. It's an article about Ki-67. Do any of you know what that is? Would you like me to go through this article with you? Ki-67 is basically a marker that a pathologist tells us about the multiplication rate of your cancer cells, which gives us another idea about the behavior of your cancer cells. And we're measuring it, but we're still sometimes not fully understanding the value of this marker. And so there's a whole article written about the pros and cons of this particular test. So maybe I'll just conclude by saying, stay tuned. You guys are quiet. How are you all doing? We're halfway through the journal, so I won't bother you much longer. We went through this COVID titer response in lung cancer patients. I think we made it through the November issue. Jennifer's asking, is it similar to nuclear grade? Similar, but not the same. So, in simplistic terms, nuclear grade is sort of like how angry do the cells look under the microscope. The pathologist looks at different things to interpret that, and they put it on a scale that is different for every tumor type. In general, the higher the nuclear grade, the more angry your tumor, at least the parts of the tumor that we biopsied, is, which means we may have to be more aggressive treating that Ki-67 is a marker, another marker for how fast the tumor duplicates, which is a part of the nuclear grade, but is not, Ki-67 is not used in the nuclear grade. The nuclear grade, my husband is blowing his nose in the background. Nuclear grade measures multiplication by looking at mitosis, which is a sign that cells are splitting and duplicating. Ki-67 is measuring multiplication in a different way. And I guess this article I just showed you that they're still trying to understand the value means because we're still trying to understand the value, we're not using it yet in bigger measures such as nuclear grade. I hope, does it make sense, Jennifer? Am I too confusing? So Ki-67 is sort of, let me write it in your comments so that you know what I'm talking about. It's Ki-67, I put it in the comments. That's a marker, a newer marker for multiplication, but the older marker for multiplication, the presence of mitosis, is still the one realized in nuclear grade, or looking at as a whole how angry the tumor is. Okay, great, I could help. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, we're 2/3 through this journal of November, and then I will reserve the December one for another day. Can you still hear me with my husband in the background? He's doing your dishes. I should probably tell you that yesterday I didn't publish a lot because yesterday we had our anniversary. Not that we did a lot, we just were at home. But I decided to just focus on being together, and it was our 22nd anniversary. So now it's 22nd year and 1 day. That's another topic for another day. Caregivers. He does so much to us. Oh, Jennifer, that's okay. I'm going to finish soon anyway, but thank you for sticking with me. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see if there's any other article that's relevant. Do you have any other questions for me here? Yeah, I think we pretty much captured this journal. How are all of you doing? Yeah, we finished it. So that was November. So how about we do December another time? This is December. I also got a special issue at the end of the year, probably because December is the month in which we have our biggest annual global breast cancer conference, the San Antonio Breast Conference, that you've probably heard a lot about in the news and on social media. And so that's probably why the Journal of Oncology has published their the most accessed articles of breast cancer in the year 2022, I think. So we can go over those together. No, I think ever. No, best of 2022. So the most accessed breast cancer articles from 2022, published by the Journal of Clinical Oncology. So we can go through that another time too. If you like this, is this helpful to you? Is this interesting? I'm reading it together with you, which means I'm learning and discovering together with you. I don't know if you like that part. It sounds like if I go out to Safari, you don't see me anymore. So maybe I shouldn't do that right now and add those links later. But I'm going to go. And I wish you all a good night, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you.